Saturdays, and today we are going over two top college football teams that are in must-win spots, that are in absolute turning points of their season, that could be on upset watch. I think they're playing two very difficult opponents for them. We were talking about Notre Dame and Clemson, two teams that you could argue to have been underwhelming in the first 2 weeks. Everybody knows Notre Dame. They played probably the best game of the whole entire college football slate so far throughout the first 2 weeks against Miami. That game went down to the wire, a game that they were favored in. And then also Clemson. We know how underwhelming Clemson has been against LSU, against Troy now. We're going to get into both of their matchups this week and talk about why it is such must-win matchups and why I believe both teams could very well get upset and be in complete trouble having two losses in 3 weeks of college football. Let's get right into it. The first team I want to go over is Notre Dame. Even though the spread is higher, Notre Dame is a 6.5 point favorite at home against Texas A&M. I think this is the matchup that I believe really could be the matchup that I think is more on upset watch. I think Texas A&M is completely flying under the radar. We look at Texas A&M as the 16th ranked team in the country. I think Texas A&M could possibly be even better than last year. Now, when you look at what they lost on defense, Nick Gordon, Shamar Stewart, we have seen that in the first two games for them, letting up 24 to UTSA, letting up 22 for Utah State. But I'm really not worried about the Texas A&M defense at all. I think it has a ton of talent, and I think they're just getting into rhythm. I think they're going to be better, surprisingly, against Notre Dame. The offense for Texas A&M, I think, could cause Notre Dame a lot of fits. When you look at Marcel Reed, he has been passing the ball a lot better and has a lot more hold of this offense, because I think he has way more receiving talent than he has last year. Mario Claver has been completely stepping up. When we look at him, a guy that I am not familiar with as a sophomore, he has 236 yards and 3 touchdowns in these two games, which is like completely unheard of. Having over 100 yards, having 3 touchdowns in 2 games, absolutely ridiculous. Then you look at KC Concepcion on the other side, one of the most talented players in the country, one of the most coveted transfer portal ads. Definitely has opened up the passing game for Marcel Reed. When you look at the running back group, I think they have a stud in Le'Veon Moss as well. So when you look at these three guys and the dual threat ability of a guy like Marcel Reed that could cause absolute fits for any defensive team, like, I think this offense is flying under the radar. And I think the defense letting up 20 plus points in both their matchups, I think is why they're flying under the radar. But this team is very solid on both sides of the ball. I could argue they have more on offense right now than Notre Dame. Marcel Reed is a guy, again, that came in the middle of last year for Connor Wegman. He's in his second year, where CJ Carr is playing a very difficult matchup 2 weeks in a row. Even though he did look impressive against Miami, it took him a little while to get going. But we saw against Miami, the playbook was limited with the amount of screens drawn up for him. And I think Notre Dame could definitely be on upset watch. We've seen Jeremiah Love not be utilized as he should have in the first game. Again, Notre Dame defense is going to be difficult for Texas A&M. It's going to be one of the best defenses they've faced all year. But like I said, the talent of Texas A&M on both sides of the football, the ability to do a little more, I think, going into this game on offense, I think Notre Dame could be on complete upset watch for sure. And when we look at Notre Dame as an independent team, possibly starting out with 2 losses, I don't know if they could possibly overcome that, because as storied as a program as Notre Dame is, them being independent, getting into a college football playoff race, I don't know if they're going to favor Notre Dame with the same amount of losses as an SEC team or a Big Ten team with their schedule. They go 0-2 against a Texas A&M team that I think is very talented. Where does that leave them? They play an SEC team in Arkansas, not an easy matchup. They play Boise State. They play USC. Like, again, they have to be flawless after going 0-2 to make the college football playoffs. This is why I think this is a huge turning point for them in the season. And if I was a Notre Dame team at home, I would not take this matchup lightly. Gun to my head, Notre Dame at home being the slightly better team. Do I think they're going to win the matchup? Yes, but I think a 6.5 point spread is just way too big. Like I said, Notre Dame is going to have Fitz guarding a dual threat quarterback like Marcel Reed, with an increase of weapons in this offense and a defense on Texas A&M side of the ball that I wouldn't take lightly for CJ Carr. Like, they could very well be an upset alert, and being 0-2 as an independent team, it is going to be a struggle making the college football playoffs if that were to happen. I think Notre Dame should not take this matchup lightly at all. I think the playing field is just about even with these two teams. And if they were to get a loss, woo, 0-2 as an independent team. Again, they have to come in and really assert dominance because I think Texas A&M is completely flying under the radar, and I think that is a loss that they definitely cannot afford. Now we get into the next matchup where I think there is another team that truly cannot afford a loss, and that is the Clemson Tigers. I am not going to lie, I drank the Kool-Aid on the Clemson Tigers. I was not high on them in the very, very, very beginning of the offseason. I was not high on them. I drank the Kool-Aid. I saw what other people were saying, and I am still high on the Clemson Tigers for sure. I think the amount of returning blue chip NFL talent that this team has, when you look at Cade Klubnik, Antonio Williams, Peter Woods, TJ Parker, Terrell. Like they have a bunch of NFL first 3 round talented guys, but it has just not been showing. And is it because of Dabo Sweeney? Is it because of Cade Klubnik? It just really hasn't been showing. Now, at least for when you talk about the LSU game, I think the defense definitely balled out against LSU. When you look at holding LSU to under 20 points, I think that is a successful day on one side of the ball, at least for Clemson. I thought Clemson really asserted their dominance in the first half of this game. They go into the halftime 10-3, and they have the ball coming out of halftime. But we all know they go scoreless. Garrett Nussmeier really shined in the second half, and they lose 17-10 in that game. And in the Troy game, really had me worried. The Troy game, they are going into halftime 16-3. They get a pick six, they get a quick score, and they take the lead, and they put their pedal on the gas in the second half. But again, the first half of this Troy game being down 2 scores, that should absolutely never happen on both sides of the ball. For the amount of talent they have on defense, they should not be letting up 16 quick points to Troy, and they should not be having 3 points with the offense they had. Now, we're going to talk about it. They did not have Antonio Williams. Antonio Williams, again, is a guy that we projected to be a top 5 receiver in college football, a guy that we projected to be one of the best players in college football. And I feel like things go under the radar in college football compared to the NFL. Like if you don't have Justin Jefferson for a game or Jamar Chase for a game, it is pretty well known in the NFL, but in college, it kind of flies under the radar. Again, not only with the common knowledge of top players in college football lacking, but also the ins and outs. It isn't really as publicized as the NFL. So again, I don't want that to fly under the radar, but against Troy, Antonio Williams should not be an excuse. You should be basically foot on the gas from start to finish against Troy. I just was going to be a complete bounce back game after the loss for LSU, and it wasn't. And the thing that bothers me about this matchup against Troy as well, we see at halftime people saying Troy's not a cupcake. Troy was flying under the radar. Like Troy, Clemson, two completely different types of classes. With what we were expecting from Clemson going into the season, being one of the best teams in the country, one of the most experienced teams in the country, one of the most teams with NFL talent, like this should not be happening. Again, everybody says after the fact, Troy's not a cupcake. Come on. You were not saying that before the game. Clemson should have completely dogged them start to finish, and they didn't. Yes, they came out with a win, a 2-score win. They didn't cover the spread. They didn't look as impressive as we thought. And now we're going into a game with Georgia Tech where you are away in this game. Georgia Tech, we said in the ACC with the start of the season, one of the most underrated teams. They do struggle in passing, but defense, they're very cohesive. And on the offensive end, they have been playing for a while as well. Haynes King, a very underrated quarterback, what he could do in the run game reminds me of a Taysom Hill. And Jamal Haynes is one of the best running backs in the country as well. Like, again, it would not surprise me if Clemson took this lightly and fell to 0-2. Again, do I think Texas A&M, even though the spread is closer, Clemson is only 3.5-point favorites compared to Notre Dame's 6.5-point favorites. I could see Texas A&M upsetting Notre Dame a lot more than I could see Georgia Tech upsetting Clemson. I think Clemson just has a lot more on offense. If Antonio Williams does play in this game, you're talking about a team with 3 really top receivers in the country, one of the best receiving corps in the country. Cade Klubnik, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and this defense has to shine as well. But we were talking about this game because, again, it is a short line, and it's a point in the season where in week 3, Clemson could fall to 2 losses for sure with a 3-point line. I think Clemson realized to come out in a comeback spot after the last 2 weeks showing, not showing out well, and absolutely dominate Georgia Tech and show they are in a different class of the ACC than Georgia Tech is. they could do a lot more on offense. Cade Klubnik really has to show why we saw all off season him being in top 3 contention for quarterbacks in the country. He has not shown that. He has not shown that at all. Do I think he could do it? Yes. But Cubs has to come out and absolutely dominate. They have to, because if they follow 2 losses, they face Florida State, they face South Carolina, another 2 tough opponents, again, in the ACC. It's going to be very interesting to see if they were to get 2 losses here, if they were able to make it out and go to the college football playoffs. But we were talking about one of the most experienced teams in Clemson, a team of one of the most experienced NFL talent that just flat out hasn't shown it. And Antonio Williams could be a game changer. Again, I don't know if he's playing yet in this matchup, but Clemson really has to come out and dominate on a short line where they could be, again, on upset alert, and they can't afford 2 losses this early in the season, as well as Notre Dame as well. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays. Drop down below in the comments. Do you think either of these teams could be on upset watch? Do you think Clemson and Notre Dame are going to absolutely skate through these matchups as they should? We'll see. These are 2 topics that I really wanted to talk about because 2 teams that really need a win that we were high on can't afford 2 losses in 3 weeks. That wraps up the episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and we are out.